Welcome to Book Witches with a B. I'm Oorja.
And I'm Colleen. Welcome to a new installment of what we're going to call our Duology Series. So they're going to be two-episode series where we have one episode where we talk about the book and the other one where we have the author on to talk about their book, kind of like a book club, but with the author. So this is our first episode, and I'm going to pass it off to Orsha to introduce our lovely guest.
Yes, so we are talking today to author of Girls Who Burn, MK Pagano, and we're so excited to have you on. If you don't mind, can I tell the little story of how we met?
Yes, please do. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! So I was actually on a girls' weekend with my mom, and we went and stayed at this really cute kind of bed and breakfast in New Jersey. And while we were there one morning, MK and her husband were also staying there. We got to talking. She told us about the book that she had just had published, and I was like, "Oh my God, totally fangirling because I want to be an author as well." And I was
Mhm.
like, "What's the book? When can I find it? I'm gonna read it." And kind of just very thankful that you have kept answering my messages, that we went along from there.
Yeah, it was so great meeting you and your mom. You guys were so sweet, and just having someone actually excited about my book, especially in a local place. The book takes place in New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. It was
Mhm.
so great meeting you.
Yes, and so I'll turn the mic over to you if you want to give yourself a brief introduction, and then we'll jump into Q&A.
Yeah, so I'm MK Pagano. I'm the author of Girls Who Burn, a YA thriller that came out from Penguin Teen summer of 2024. The hardcover, the paperback will be out this summer if anyone's interested in that. I don't know exactly when yet. But I'm from New Jersey. I write thrillers set in small towns with strong romantic subplots. And I am hard at work on my next thriller right now. And yeah, I think that's me.
Amazing. We'll definitely want to ask you questions about your current project, but we can get to that after our scheduled Q&A.
Okay, I think I'm going to start the first question off.
Okay.
So the first one that we have is what inspired you to write these like mystery thriller novels?
Yeah, it's funny. I used to write contemporary. Actually, the very first book I wrote when I was like, I'm gonna try to write a book, it was like a contemporary mystery, historical fantasy. Like I combined all the genres because I didn't know what I was doing. And then when I queried that, a query is, you send it to literary agents. Like nobody wanted it because it was a mess. So then I was like, all right. And then I kind of learned about genre and I was like, I'm gonna try writing contemporary. That sounds right. With my second book, I did get agented, but it did not get picked up by publishers, unfortunately. And it was a book about a missing girl, but it wasn't quite a thriller. And the rejections I got from editors at publishing houses kept being like, this is too quiet for a thriller. This is too quiet for a thriller. And I'm like, what? I didn't write a thriller. Like, what are you talking about? But it is my favorite genre to read. So I don't know why I thought I wouldn't be able to write one. And it was those rejections that caused me to be like, well, let me see what happens if I try to write a thriller instead of inadvertently, apparently, writing one. Um, and then, yeah, I unfortunately parted ways with my first agent, but I got another agent with Girls Who Burn, and she sold it very quickly to Penguin Teen. And I love thrillers. I think it's just there's the aspect of like puzzle solving as you read. You're trying to figure out who did it and why. And I love that. I'm a big puzzle person. Crafting it is really hard, like trying to throw the readers off the scent, but also like make the end result be more believable. But now that I have one under my belt fully, it's a little tiny bit easier because I kind of have like the pattern down and stuff. But yeah, it's my favorite genre to read, and now it's my favorite genre to write.
That's amazing to hear. That's so cool. How long did it take for you to write Girls Who Burn?
I started it in 2020. I feel like a lot of people started books in 2020. I had gotten laid off at the start of the pandemic. We moved in with my in laws because we were like between homes. Um, and I found myself with more free time than I've had in like my entire adult life. Like I didn't have a job. I had a 1 year old, but my in-laws are retired, so they were like watching her the whole day, and I was like, oh, I have a lot of time to actually work on this book. Um, and I didn't finish it until 2022. Like I work on something for a chunk of time and then I set it aside for a while and work on something else so that I come back to it with fresh eyes to edit. And that's when I queried it, got my agent, and sold it to a publisher. And then 2 years after that is when it came out because publishing moves very slowly.
Very fair.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I don't think I could write a book even if you gave me 2 years, so that's incredible. Um, yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about the title of the book? We really liked it, and how did you come up with this title?
I'm so glad to hear it because some people did not like this title. Um,
What?
so I did not come up with the title. I am not good at titles. I was calling it Beer's End, which is the name of the town that it takes
Mhm.
place in, which is like kind of a weird, cool town name, but not an especially compulsive book name. Like it was actually one of my writer friends who was like, It sounds like lit fic with that." I'm like, "This is not lit fic. It's a YA thriller." And like I was just thinking about the themes. I'm like, well, there's a lot of ambition, there's a lot of rage, a lot of female rage, a lot of like anger and stuff like that. And it was my friend who was like, "What about just girls who burn?" And I was like, "Ooh, that's kind of cool." So then I did end up querying it with that title, selling it with that title. There was some back and forth with the sales department at Penguin who were like, it might be too metaphorical, which ended up being the complaint for some people. But ultimately, they were like, no, no, we really love it. Let's keep it. And I like it, even if not everybody does. And some people are like, well, there's no literal fire in this book. And I'm like, yeah, it's a metaphor. Like, I'm a writer, I'm allowed to use metaphors. But my second title, which I'm not supposed to say yet, is also metaphorical, and I really like it, but I can see people complaining about that too. But I think at the end of the day, you got to do what you want to do, what your editor and agent and everybody agrees on, and not worry about every single person's opinions.
It definitely, Girls Who Burn. I also think like it's okay to let your readers think a little bit. Like this
Yes,
title, it involves critical thinking, and I think that's definitely beneficial. So,
I agree. Thank you.
yeah. Oh, okay. So we're not spoiling the ending of this book because we want people to read it. So without
Thank you.
spoiling, did you always know from the start who you wanted the murderer to be?
With this book, yes, I always knew who that person was going to be and how. Um, Maybe not quite how they did it. I had to kind of figure that out. Um, the why they did it kind of evolved a little as I developed this person's character. But yeah, that's not always the case. I have other books that I've drafted or started to draft where like I'm like, oh, this killer is boring, and then I change it, and then I have to go back. With this one, I knew who the killer was from early on.
That is so cool. Can I
No, it
just
was
say real quick?
Yeah.
I'm writing a murder mystery myself.
Oh,
We've talked
good.
about it on the podcast before too. And I will say my husband has helped me a lot, like figuring out like
Mhm.
the puzzle pieces of it. And I didn't know, I knew who my first victim was going to be from the beginning, but it took a little bit of
Mhm.
discussion back and forth for me to like decide on a killer. So
Yeah.
I'm just so fascinated by that.
Yeah, I think different writers start in different places. Like I have a writer friend who always starts with the twist. They think up what the twist is going to be at the end, and then they come up with like the characters and the plot and stuff. Where I always start with characters and with setting. Like that's a big thing for me.
Very cool. Your video has turned off. It just randomly
It's
turned off.
weird.
It's back now, but
Okay,
that's
there
I'm
we
back.
fine.
Okay.
Very
go.
cool.
Okay,
All
let's
right,
see.
Colleen.
Next question. Are any of the characters that you wrote based on people in your real life?
No, not like fully. I think though with every character you draw on bits and pieces of people that you've met, not necessarily people who are even in my life anymore, but like I like to draw on my own teenage experiences. So maybe people I met when I was a teenager or in my early 20s. Um, but I wouldn't say anyone is like a direct cipher of somebody I know, because that's a little rude to do to somebody without their permission. Um, but it's also like you don't want to be beholden to one person that you know. You want to be able to like invent these characters. I think there's also little bits of fictional people, like characters I've read or seen on TV and everybody. But yeah.
Okay, I know it might be hard to choose, but do you have a favorite character in this book?
I like my protagonist the best. I like Addie. She's a hot mess. She is so, I think, hurt by all the things that have happened to her in her life. I mean, no spoilers, obviously, but you know, at the start of the book, her mom has abandoned the family. Her sister has passed away. She blames herself, even though she didn't do it. Not a spoiler, you know that from the beginning because you're in her head. And I think she's really, really hard on herself, and she's made a lot of really bad mistakes, but I think making mistakes doesn't make you um, unworthy or undeserving of love in the end. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across. And that's something I would tell my teenage self if I were able to go back in time. So, like, I'm not like I didn't base her on me, but there are different parts of me in her, I think.
This one's kind of fun. Do you think you could get away with murder, and if so, how?
I really don't. I'm a terrible liar. I'm really bad at like hiding how I feel about things and how I really think about things, like to a fault. I don't think I could get away with murder in any way, shape or form.
That is very fair. I don't think I could either. I think I would get too anxious and nervous
Yes,
about it.
exactly. Yes, I have very bad anxiety. It would not work out well for me.
I'm really good at compartmentalization, so I do think I could get away with it.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I know who I'm not asking to help now, though.
No, no, don't ask me. I'm not good at
I'll
keeping
be really,
secrets like that.
I'll be supportive, but I'll just be really nervous about it. But I will be
Yeah.
supportive.
This is a fun question. Is there a specific reason you chose ballet for Fiona?
Yeah, so ballerinas really fascinate me, ballerinas and ballerinos, because like there's this drive, this ambition, like anybody who like from a young age has to work really hard at something. Like I consider myself a fairly ambitious person. Like I spent a long time trying to get published and become a writer, but there's no like expiration date on becoming a writer. Like it doesn't matter how old you are, what physical shape you're in, or any of that. If you want to be a ballerina or like a gymnast or like a figure skater or something like that, you have to work really hard from a very young age. And I find that so interesting that as a child, there are people that are just like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sacrifice all these things for this one thing. And like that level of ambition is just so interesting to me. So that kind of went along with the theme of like female ambition and what will you sacrifice for your dreams. And yeah, I just find that whole world, like I didn't set the story in like a ballet school or anything like that because I've never been to ballet. I took ballet in like kindergarten. I was terrible at it. But like I don't know enough about the inside workings of that. But maybe someday, if I feel like doing a ton of research, I'd set something at a ballet school because, but yeah, ballet is just, it's so interesting. It seems really cutthroat. I feel like anytime there's a ballet or a ballet school in a story, you know that something big is going to go down. And I just find that all so interesting.
That actually kind of leads into our next question. Is did you always know you wanted to be an author?
When I was little, I wrote a lot of stories. I don't remember ever saying I want to be an author, but I would write a lot, just like as a homework assignment, like they'd assign like, oh, write a 2-page story, and I would write like a 20-page story, or just in my spare time, I would like just write little stories like on the family word processor or like in my little notebooks and stuff. And then I stopped in high school. I stopped writing altogether, which still kind of bums me out. I just thought I wasn't good enough. Um, and I didn't start again until I was in my early 20s. I was working my very first job out of college. I was an administrative assistant and I was so bored. I mean, I worked at a wonderful company with wonderful people, but my job itself was so administrative. It was just like schedule meetings, go get lunch, answer the phone. And I was like, I just came out of college. I have a master's degree. I did all this thinking and like all this creative stuff. And now I'm just like scheduling meetings. This is so boring. So I took a writing class just to have something for my brain to do. And from there, I was like, I used to like writing stories. And then I started doing it more and more, and it took me a while to finish my first book, which, as I told you, went nowhere. And by then I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I really want to try and do this. And it took a while, but I did it. So yeah, don't give up. That's my advice to you.
Thank you. I will try not to. Um,
Mhm.
I completely get the like feeling like your stories aren't good enough because I totally feel that. Like it's so hard I have all of these thoughts in my head and then putting them down on paper.
Mhm.
I I think I do the thing you're not supposed to do. I like write stuff down and then I immediately go back and I'm like, well, and then I try to edit it and then you just get nowhere. So
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like you're up to editing it, edit it. But like, I think taking a break and trying to work on a different project is, at least that's how it works for me, is that's how I'm able to edit with like fresh eyes and stuff.
amazing. So speaking of our youth, and enjoying reading and writing, what were some of your favorite books growing up?
I'm gonna age myself, but I loved The Babysitter's Club. I loved Sweet Valley. I feel like anyone who grew up in like the 80s, 90s, kind of any girl especially, kind of has the same answer. I loved Madeline L'Engle, A Wrinkle in Time, and all of her books. I was very into Susan Cooper, The Dark is Rising series, which is which is also fantasy. Um, I read Nancy Drew. I was very into Nancy Drew. Less so the Hardy Boys, I think. But yeah, anything with like female protagonists going on adventures, sometimes solving mysteries, sometimes just kind of living their lives, figuring stuff out. Coming of age, I obviously always loved, even when I was like on into my 20s. But YA didn't really exist in its current form until I think Twilight was really like when it all like exploded in the
Mhm.
early aughts. Um, so I felt like after I'd outgrown like Sweet Valley and Babysitters and Club and that, I felt kind of like I didn't really have anywhere to go. Like I don't think I really even read for pleasure all that much in high school and college because I didn't really know what to read besides like the assigned reading. So I'm just so glad that we have YA and just the breadth that we have it today. I think that's amazing. That there are so many options for kids now.
Agreed. And then,
That's
what are,
incredible.
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's incredible. I also read a lot of Nancy Drew growing up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I also read the Hardy Boys. I agree. I liked Nancy Drew better, um, but
Yes,
I read a lot of
agreed.
those.
Yeah, oh man, I remember like devouring. I didn't have a bedtime in when I was in grade school because I liked to sleep, so I would always go to sleep on time. So my parents were like,
Nice.
"Yeah, whatever." But I remember staying up late, far later than I ever would when I was reading a Nancy Drew book because I was like, "I gotta know
Mhm.
how it ends. I need to know."
Mhm. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite books now? Like, what are you reading now?
Like I said, I read a lot of thrillers. My favorite author of all time is Tana French. She's an Irish crime writer. She writes adult thrillers, but she's absolutely amazing. Just her prose, her characters, just the psychological thrillers, the plot. They all take place in Ireland. They're incredible if you haven't ever read her. Um, I'm currently reading a thriller called When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. That's also an adult thriller. I'm just trying to expand. I was reading only YA for so long that I was like, I want to expand a little into the adult world. And that is a thriller about a bunch of residents in a Brooklyn neighborhood that's slowly being gentrified, and the protagonist like starts to realize like, oh, maybe her neighbors aren't just moving away, like something is happening to them, and it's really creepy. because it seems really realistic, and it's kind of rage-inducing, but it's a great book. Um, I just finished, I don't know if you've read Ginny Meyer's Sane, her latest. She wrote When the Bones Sing, Dark and Shallow Lies. Those are speculative thrillers.
Mhm.
They're really good. They're so atmospheric. Like when people, I've had a couple readers reach out to me and say like, I just finished your book and I loved it. Like who else writes like you? And I think she writes a lot like me, except there's always something like magical going on in her stories. 'Cause she writes small towns, so she usually writes southern towns, and I've never lived in the South. And she writes romances, but then there's always some kind of like ghosty thing going on, and I haven't done that, at least not yet. Um, but yeah, I there are so many great thriller writers right now. Like Lisa Jewell is amazing. I love her. I mean, Karen McManus, obviously the OG. I love Diana Urban. I love Cindy. Her. She's a friend of mine, though. Full disclosure. Kelsey Yu, she writes amazing books. Megan Lally. I could go on and on and on and on. Like,
That's amazing. I think both of us are more firmly in like the fantasy romances
okay.
that we normally read. I love mysteries. And so
Mhm.
I'm gonna get a list of all of these people from you afterwards because I need more. I want more like
Yeah.
mystery thrillers in my life. I love it. So
There's so many good ones. Yeah, I like fantasy too. I find myself reading it a little less often now. Um, but yeah, I feel like I've read all the greats.
so I think that's the end of our like regularly scheduled questions, but we can I think we have time to fit in a few more if you are down to just free for all, go for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Colleen, do you have any that we haven't asked yet?
No, I mean, we have the specific way you go about writing, but I feel like
Oh
you've kind of
yeah.
talked a lot about that, just kind of sprinkled in. But if you want to do a more specific discussion about that, we can.
Just like how I write a book.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
what's your
basically, if you have a
process?
certain process. I know some authors have like a whole process with it, but not all do.
Yeah, I mean, like I have a keep a lot of people have like notebooks, but I feel like I'm on the go all the time now. I have two little kids, so I usually just have my phone. So I have my notes app that syncs to my computer, and I have a document that's just like story ideas, and like sometimes I'll just get like a little one word idea, I'll jot it in there, and then when I'm trying to come up with an idea for a new story, I'll look through that, and if there's anything that I've like expanded upon, like sometimes I'll start with a sentence and then I'll turn into a paragraph and then I'll turn into like several paragraphs. At that point, I put it in its own separate note um, on my phone, and then I'll keep adding to it. And eventually, if I have enough in there, I'm like, oh, this is book shaped. I'll move that to a Word document and no, a Google Doc, and then because then I can work on that on my phone and my computer. And then when I have enough in there, that's when I open it in Scrivener. And I don't know if you use Scrivener, but it's just kind of it's so much easier for drafting for me because you have like a little section for characters, a little section for theme, a section for plot. You can move chapters around very easily. It's much easier to me than drafting in Microsoft Word, which is what I used to do. And then with thrillers, but with every story, I also have to do an outline, and that I have to do in Excel for some reason. I need the I need the Excel sheet, so I have like all my different documents open, um, and that I tend to follow like the save the cat kind of structure. Like you have the inciting incident and the reaction and the first plot point and all that stuff, and then
Mhm.
there's like a thriller beat sheet I put along with that of like the murder and then the brush with authority and then this and the first point of investigation and all that stuff. And then since I write romantic thrillers, you guys are like, this is way too complicated.
No, this
um,
is
I
amazing.
also I have a like romance beat sheet. There's like a romance writer beat sheet called Romancing the Beat that I stole from the romance community that I
Mhm.
put into my spreadsheet too to make sure that the right like romantic beats are hitting at the right point, the like the meet cute and the pulling away and then the coming back together type stuff. So not everything is perfectly lined up always, and I don't think you should make everything perfectly lined up, but um, when I put the story in there and I see that it's more or less in the place it should be, I feel like then I can start really writing because I have the plot kind of laid out like that. So yeah, but it's taken me like years to create that process. It just like it evolves with time, I feel like with any writer.
I do have
Sorry,
another
that
question. Do you have?
was
So we didn't even talk about the romance of it all, which is such a fun part of this book. First of all, I want to say that so we had a book club about this book actually, so we've discussed this a little bit, and the other two girls in our book club also, like it was such a fun book club book. But we were talking about how you like really nailed the high school age romance of it all, like the emotions that they're feeling, their reactions, all of that stuff. How did you how did you tap into that, like to write the romance
I
so realistic?
I remember my like teenage and early 20s romances so well. I don't know what it says about me that I still feel like a teenager half the time, even though that was a long time ago now for me. Like I just that feeling of first falling in love and like the awkwardness of like your first time maybe and like the confusion of like does this person like me? Are they just using me? Is it like I remember that all so well. Maybe because I've been writing about it since I was like 24 or so, but it comes really naturally to me. Like I feel like the romance, the sexual attention, all that, that's my favorite part of a story. So it's kind of like I have to construct the plot around that sometimes. Like there are times when like the plot will change majorly, but like the romantic tension will always just kind of be there. It's the more the plot that I struggle with than the romance. Making sure all the clues line up and stuff because I just care less about that part. Like as long as the character dynamics are there, like that's the part I care about the most. And but that's why I have like agents and editors and stuff so they can be like, "Hey, this part doesn't make any logical sense." And I'm just like, "All right, fine." Like, can I tell a funny anecdote? Um
Yes, please do.
so like I yeah, after I had turned in my book to my publisher, it was going through copy editing. So it's after my regular editor had done her editing, they give it to a copy editor who checks the like logic and stuff. And she came back to me and was like, "You made it the full moon every single night of this book." And I was like, "Yeah, because they're in the woods and they need to be able, there's no lights. They need to be able to see by the light of the moon." And she's like, "That's not how moons work. Like, it can't be the full moon every night." And she sent me like a moon chart that was like, "This is a full moon. This is a quarter moon, like crescent moon." And so I had to like rearrange some stuff, but I was like, who is gonna notice that? Like, but it's if anybody has been keeping track of like the moonlight in my book, it's all like at the exact right phase of the moon of every single day that is in there. So
That's so
yeah.
funny. We talk about this on our podcast a lot. We read for the vibes. So
Hmm.
neither of us would have realized that it was a full moon every single time. But
Hmm. Yeah, I write for the vibes, but that's what copy editors are for. So
that's so funny. Also, I don't know if this crossed your mind, Colleen, but we also talk about how much we love the only one bed trope. And we were so
Yes.
excited that that was in this book.
I know. It's like it's such a cliche, it's such a trope, but I love it. I love it so much. And I've had to like struggle with not putting in every single book I write. I'm like, can I put it in this next book? And I ended up not, but then I think the book after that, it's going to be an only one futon, but it's there.
Love it so much. That's amazing. It's like, it's the perfect, especially for high schoolers, it's the perfect, like, oh, it's about to happen. Will it go well, Faye? Like, it's so good.
Yeah, I love it.
I remember getting to that point in this book and I just like stopped and just fist bumped a little bit. I was like so excited. I was like, it's here. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
It's by far
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yep.
Do you have any more questions, Colleen? I think that that might be all of the things that was
Was it,
curious
I
about that we hadn't already
anything
asked.
about this book, but I did want to talk a little bit about, I know you can't say a whole lot, but the next book that you're writing, because you've mentioned it a few times. So whatever you
Hmm.
can tell us, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I don't know when it'll be out yet or when I can announce it, but I am writing another romantic YA thriller. I can say it's set in a small town in Maine, a coastal town, and it's actually set at like my protagonist, her family inherits this kind of old mansion out on an island, like a rocky island in Maine, and it's connected to the mainland by a causeway that floods a lot. So I get to do a lot of the like isolation trope, like, oh no, we're stuck on this island because the causeway is flooded and it's storming kind of thing. And there's a family of caretakers that lives on this island. And there's three brothers, and one of them likes to surf, and one of them is really grumpy, and one of them is friendly. And there's like cousin dynamics. I like doing cousins and family. I find that really interesting. And there's like a fractured friend group, um, and there's some drownings, and I think that's most of what I can say. But I hope people like it. I hope people like it as much as they like this one. So
That sounds so fun. I'm just picturing like foggy,
yes,
atmospheric, the
yes,
ocean. That's gonna be so fun.
yes. A lot of fog. There's an abandoned lighthouse, which I've always wanted to write because those are so fun.
It's incredible. I like the isolation trope a lot as well
Hmm.
when you're like stuck, especially in like a mystery where you're like, oh, you have to stay here. You can't just leave.
Hmm.
Like all
Hmm.
that ensues from that. I love.
Thank you.
Amazing. All right. Well, do you have anything that you would like to talk about, MK?
Well, I want to hear more about your book, but I know that you talk about that on other episodes, so maybe we could talk about that some other
I would
time,
be
unless you want
happy
to
to
talk
talk
about it
about
here.
it now. Yeah, that would be, thank you. That would be
Mhm.
amazing. I don't think I have fully explained it ever, just mentioned that I'm writing. So, I'm actually writing, it's a fantasy murder mystery. So it's set in like a town full of magical creatures. It's set in it's like the fantasy version. If it's set in like back in the day, there's no real time,
Okay.
you know. And so in this town, there's one human and the rest of the townsfolk are all magical. And then this one human gets married. And so now there's two humans in the town, and then a murder happens. I won't spoil it, but a murder happens. And then it's kind of gonna be like a couple more humans are introduced because they're like relatives of each other and stuff like that. And it's going to be about this woman, the wife, who's a little bit young. The townsfolk think she's a little silly, but it's kind of like she really comes into her own and she like works to solve this mystery and find the killer and all of this stuff. And I really want to make it I love when you have female characters who don't who aren't girls in the beginning, but then they forge
Mhm.
these like bonds of friendship through the solving of a mystery. So that's going to be a big thing for me. And then I've also, I don't know if I can manage it, but I've decided that I want this to be the origin story of this lady detective. And then it would be a
Ooh.
series where she, like kind of like Agatha Christie has her like detective
Oh
series.
yeah.
So then she is like the supernatural murder mystery investigator that she has like all of these adventures in the future.
Oh, that sounds really cool. You'll
Thanks.
have to let me know when it's ready for readers.
I will. This was so amazing.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you again so much
Thank
for coming on
you.
with us.
Yeah, it was so great meeting you.
All right.
Okay,
Um,
goodbye. This was
bye.
so good. I'm going to
Bye.
stop our podcast and recording.
Yeah.